Welcome everybody to the General Assembly of the Life Cycle Initiative, this sixth General Assembly. Just to give you a bit of context, as you all know, and kind of as we are advancing on what we're doing on life cycle thinking and in the Life Cycle Initiative. So just as a general message for you on what we do. So on life cycle thinking, helping to inform sustainable decisions for governments and businesses to speed up the transition towards sustainable consumption and production. This is the motto, and we will be talking a lot about this general message today, and more concretely on what the initiative is doing about it. Moving on to the next slide, because we don't want to spend too much time here. Just first of all, to again thank you, as we do every time, all the funding partners of the Life Cycle Initiative that you see on your screens. So we're seeing quite a lot of movement of partners, funding partners, which is great. But here's a thank you note to the European Commission, the French government, the Swiss government, Braskem as our platinum sponsors, Braskem of Brazil. The gold sponsors, we have the American Chemistry Council, the German government, Unilever, Plastics Europe, and IBICT, also from Brazil. And finally, last but not least, our silver sponsors, IOBE in the Basque Country in Spain, and PRE Sustainability Consultants. I'll just go quickly through the agenda that you can see on your slides. So we'll have a very short opening remarks now from the Deputy Director of the Economy Division in UNEP. Stephen, great to see you. I'm very pleased to open the floor for Stephen Stone, the Deputy Director of the Economy Division in UNEP, and he will provide us with some opening remarks. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Jurens, and welcome to all those who are joining this sixth General Assembly of the Life Cycle Initiative today. It's a very important year for the Life Cycle Initiative. Of course, you all know it's the 20th anniversary of the Life Cycle Initiative. And personally, as I've been with UNEP for about 10, 12 years, I've really seen life cycle rise in prominence, not only within UNEP, which is very important, but even sort of more broadly in the policy space. The science of life cycle, the footprinting, is taking hold across policy circles because people are very concerned about the climate footprint, the nature footprint, the pollution footprint of different products that they're consuming, or that as companies we might be producing, or as countries that we might be producing. So it's a very big year for Life Cycle Initiative. And we're seeing quite a lot of changes. I think the Life Cycle Initiative, the community that you form, is very much part of this. And some of the tools that you've been developing, for example, the Sustainable Consumption and Production Hotspots Analysis tool with time series data over 25 years, over 150 countries. These are the kinds of tools that make life cycle analysis relevant and accessible to policymakers. Which really gives a hold, I think, for the kind of work that you're doing. I wanted to share with you one example as you kick off today, and Jorens has taken us through the agenda for today, which looks quite good, quite full. But just to touch on for a minute the issue of plastics. Plastics, as you all know, is top level agenda now with the passing at the UN Environment Assembly 5.2 earlier this year in Nairobi. Countries agreed on launching a legally binding instrument on plastics through an international negotiating committee. This has started, and the point here is that it's taken a full life cycle approach of plastics. So it started with a concern around plastic pollution, plastic litter, which is visceral, right? It all hits us in the stomach when we see all that plastic in the ocean and the marine animals that are choking on it. But it doesn't stop there, because through the work, your work, we know that the life cycle of plastic begins with polymers, additives, and the things that shape the plastics over the life stream of the use, the life stream of the use. So plastics is a very interesting example of how the science that's been created in life cycle initiative and analysis is being applied at a policy level for very, very important decisions that are being made. And I think here, I'd also like to tip my hat to Jorens and the team, because they have worked very hard to bring this science that you create, that you shape, into that whole negotiating process. And I think they've done so very effectively. I want to extend from plastics to the other high impact sectors of the economy, which again, through life cycle analysis, we know which those sectors are that have the high climate, nature, and pollution footprints. It's agriculture and food, it's energy systems, mobility, transport systems, buildings and construction, huge footprints, but also textiles and electronics that have large pollution footprints, toxicity footprints. We know this because of the science from the Life Cycle Initiative. And within UNEP, we are raising our focus on life cycle analysis, life cycle initiative in our work and engaging with industries to raise the bar in performance so that products stay within the use cycle longer, they avoid becoming waste, and that they have greater utility so that our economies are more circular and less wasteful over time. And as part of this engagement with industry, this shift towards working with those players in the high impact sectors, we need you, we need your science know-how, we need your know-how of how to engage with industries as well. And we feel at UNEP that this is how you shift the needle. This is how you raise the bar on performance, by working with industry, by working with science, and by working with policymakers who ultimately will set the frame for investment decisions and for production and consumption decisions. So I don't want to go on too long. I know you have a full schedule today, and it's great to see some familiar faces out there. I would like to end with my sincere thanks to all of you who work hard to make the Life Cycle Initiative prosper. So to the steering committee members, and I understand from your ends, new members will be elected today. To our funding partners who have been with the Life Cycle Initiative over the years, making it what it is today, getting it to the point where it is today. To the project leaders who are taking the different work streams forward on Life Cycle Initiative and the different products and sectors. And last but not least, to the Life Cycle Initiative team who work very hard behind the scenes to make this happen. So with that, Jorens, I'll hand it back over to you and wish you all a very productive 6th General Assembly today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stephen. That was very nice, very kind words as well on the work. Actually, maybe also to go on this perhaps celebratory mode, or to give us a bit more energy before we go back to the hard work. Let us share some glimpse of the event that we had to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Life Cycle Initiative. We'll get started to celebrate, as we do today, the 20 years of the Life Cycle Initiative.
Celebrating the 20 years of the Life Cycle Initiative is really a big event. The Life Cycle Initiative led to many progresses. Government, industry, international organizations, NGOs, everyone is now speaking of the life cycle analysis or assessment.
How do we move now forward from the foundational work which we set to really leapfrogging and integrating the life cycle thinking throughout what we're doing?
Well, I'll just continue to be more than humble to bring you today a constellation, I should say, of speakers to discuss about the developments of life cycle thinking so far.
I really see the hotspot analysis that we were developed is really being, foundational. And I think what's happened is that there was a lot of effort early on in building the supply. And I've been amazed in the last 3 to 4 years, the demand for LCA has skyrocketed.
Where does this need and request for more harmonization, where does this come from, and how did you see it channeled in the initiative?
2 points on that. The first is we were really actively trying that the results are robust, and that's where I think harmonization and standardization is really useful. The second point is industry also, I think, appreciate to have stability and to have reference method that instead of having every consulting office or everyone doing its own methods, to try to do something which is really good.
What is this, the role that the Life Cycle Initiative is playing in all this process, and how is it evolving?
Having UN in the game, the partnership and the work together enable us to bring the best brain together, and also the enthusiasm.
Where are we now in terms of social LCA?
2020, we launched the revised version of social LCA, that is the new guidelines. We are now participating in the development of the ISO standard. Several members from the Life Cycle Initiative, being steering committee members, project leaders of projects of the Life Cycle Initiative, participating as well in the development of the social LCA standard.
How can the initiative help more businesses and other organizations to integrate the social aspects in their operations?
The initiative is already doing that. I mean, with this document, with the pilots, with the awareness raising on the need to consider social aspects in sustainability assessment.
Would you be able to tell us, what do you see as the most relevant developments on life cycle thinking in the last 20 years?
One of the developments I would like to highlight as a first answer is only by looking through the over 100 participants, if you look where they are from. When I see here really that it has become really global, from all countries of the world. And another point is moving from a cradle to grave life cycle understanding to a cradle to cradle life cycle understanding, having one solution through a circular economy, and having this as a development where clearly life cycle thinking and life cycle assessment behind is embedded as really relevant, to make eco-design and design for circularity happening.
Can you tell us a little bit about marine litter and impacts related to plastics?
A topic like plastic pollution, particularly, with its relevance for marine litters for the marine environment, it's not being considered. I would call this, blind area where you have no current indicators. There is a clear track record of the Life Cycle Initiative that such consensus models can be developed in a certain time frame, and in this way provide new methods that are quickly then adopted by the community and fill these gaps.
How do you see governments use tools like the Sustainable Consumption Production Hotspots Analysis tool?
What we can do is really look at it from a broad policy development, look at it from applications to help prioritize within that region or within that country where are the really relevant sectors or the ones that are most critical. And then for those prioritized sectors, you really need to look at it also from what are the specific guidance, PCRs, et cetera.
Why is it so important to bring the social aspect?
And all the interest and really concern of companies and investors, the investment parties, that need sustainability metrics for making decisions. And this is where we see that now there is a pressure to offer them this very consistent framework with LCA-based metrics.
How can we ensure that the LCA results remain comparable and credible?
One recommended impact assessment method, that would already reduce the differences. And then also the allocation is possible to agree, at least at the PCR level, of in a way that it becomes comparable.
We have this education, which I think really give the frame for good practice. And here the Life Cycle Initiative has played a great role and has continued in terms of capacity building.
Which of the knowledge and tools of the Life Cycle Initiative do you find most useful, and what is the feedback that you've gathered?
The life cycle management, how business uses it to decrease footprint, create opportunities, and make value chains more sustainable. That is one of the dearest publications from the initiative. I also want to mention that, at least in Latin America, one of the methods that has been used and has been raising a lot of awareness, and it is being used by companies, is the VULCA, the water use in LCA. More than 60 companies already have their case studies in the Water Hub, the Water Action Hub of the UN Global Compact.
Can you tell us a bit more about your experience of applying some of these tools like product environmental footprints in the case of textiles in South Africa?
Yeah, currently we've been contracted with UNEP to do PEF studies on SMMEs in the clothing and textile sector, working with the companies and trying to identify what is their environmental footprints by starting to look at life cycle inventory data, starting to collect data. So we've actually had quite a bit of training from the experts as well when it comes to PEF. And also we're working with organizations such as CADIS to bring PEF studies to the organizations to make them understand how valuable this will be for them.
How the EU is using life cycle thinking and tools in the processes in Europe for policy making.
I think life cycle assessment has become an essential component of most, I would say, sustainability-related policies at the EU level, especially with regard to product-related policies. And LCA, and more particularly the environmental footprint method that the Commission has adopted as the recommended LCA approach to be used, have been used in important policies and legislation, such as the taxonomy regulation, the new battery regulation, the construction product regulation. And one thing that I would like to discuss in particular, the recently proposed new regulation on eco-design of sustainable products.
How do you see that the life cycle initiative particularly could contribute to the future of creating more future-proof products and businesses?
Any products that are not looking at the environmental impacts or trying to control adverse impacts on the environment are not future-proof. So the kind of products that will embody our current ideas on how environmental conservation can be promoted is going to impact what products evolve and what products are considered as future-proof. To me, it is very obvious that unless we are thinking in life cycle terms, we will never be able to future-proof ourselves.
Why is life cycle thinking relevant for governments?
So in Switzerland, the interest of life cycle thinking is increasing at the political level and also in the population. There are a lot of questions from the government and the parliament that ask for evidence relying on life cycle assessment. Life cycle assessment is indeed seen as transparent, reliable, and also result-oriented tool. So we really see that the interest is growing and that the LSA can strengthen the development of the policy development. Some of the work developed by the Life Cycle Initiative, such as the Global Guidance on Environmental Life Cycle Impact Assessment, so GLAM, is of strong interest for us, for instance, because it will really strengthen the impact assessment that we can use to give information to policymakers.
How do you feel about using weighting methods for combining different environmental impacts?
In Switzerland, we do have developed a method which is relying on ecological scarcity. It weights all the environmental indicators according to the objective of the Swiss Confederation. We can weight all the indicators into one single score that helps us to rank the alternatives and to give conclusiveness to life cycle assessment.
We are right now developing the 14074 standard, which is normalization, weighting, and interpretation. So there is a call from industry and call from users of the LCA to come with a standard that helps with the one indicator or disaggregation.
But how do we address the ones who are still not converted?
Also for the policy making, how do we compete with other priorities that policymakers have? Because in different contexts, the priorities are very different.
Mainstreaming is about converting people. And I've seen light bulb moments, when you're talking to companies and they're actually saying, well, actually, I'm not just focusing on my company, and that is life cycle thinking. I'm now focusing on my supply chain. Who can I work with? Can I work with my retailers when it comes to redesigning maybe a packaging or something? And that is where all of this data and everything, which is extremely important, that is what informs the eco-design. That is what informs companies to then move forward.
The issue of scaling up or extending it beyond the circle of true believers is a crucial one. And I think there is a very important interaction between science and methodology development and policy. It is the role of awareness raising, communication training, and capacity building to take companies, to actually make companies aware that this is not a threat and this is not something that will actually take them down, but it's rather an opportunity.
The metrics, the foundational metrics of circularity for me is the basis for understanding not only footprinting, but essentially how circular are our products, how circular are our firms, how circular are our economies ultimately. The agreement on plastics at UNEP 5.2 makes life cycle even more important because essentially Now that language is in the agreement that will lead towards the negotiating of potentially a plastics treaty along the full value chain, the life cycle of plastics. And for me, this community is part of the building blocks for going forward.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Thad. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that gave you a good idea of the very packed and certainly very eventful, very dynamic event that we had to celebrate the 20th anniversary. Just to give a very quick overview of the strategy, and Stephen already mentioned a bit of this in the opening remarks. But let's say, I mean, also to put the context, we've been framing the work of the Life Cycle Initiative around the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda for a long time now. We're in a critical time. We really need to speed up a lot of interventions in the lead up to the 2030 milestone. And for that, we're still further focusing the work of the initiative on those areas where life cycle approaches can make the biggest difference, looking at the environmental and social footprints, the hotspots. Where are the hotspots in the economy? So as part of the life cycle initiative being hosted in UNEP, specifically in the finance and economic transformation subprogram, we're focusing on these high impact sectors. We're trying to bring in more of our work, the work of the initiative, on informing the decisions in those high impact sectors. So moving to the next slide, please. This is a structure that probably we've presented before. On your left, on the left-hand side of your screens, you can see this kind of the cube, almost like a cubic cube. The Rubik cube, sorry, of the program of the medium-term strategy of UNEP, where you see this strong action on 3 pillars that represent the 3 planetary crises of climate change, nature loss, and chemicals and pollution. So we're focusing most of the activity of UNEP to deliver action that helps bring climate stability, so prevent climate change, action towards living in harmony with nature, and action towards a pollution-free planet. And as you will see highlighted, this finance and economic transformation work is a cross-cutting, is the enabling, one of the enabling subprograms that is helping UNEP to do that, together with digital transformation, and then the foundational programs on science and governance. Just to highlight, as you can see at the bottom with this, what we see is that the science that is informing all of this action is telling us that the main problem is coming from unsustainable patterns of consumption and production, and it's changing these patterns towards sustainability. That is the main focus of UNEP. Interestingly, of course, life cycle approaches are absolutely crucial to inform this transformation, this transition from unsustainable patterns to sustainable patterns of consumption and production. And what you see on the right-hand side is the work that we're doing across sectors. So picking on those sectors, Stephen mentioned them already, picking on those sectors that are the biggest hotspots from environmental footprints perspective, the biggest culprits, if you want, for the 3 planetary crises. And at the right of the screen, you can see that life cycle approaches are crucial to inform all of these decisions. So moving on, I mean, essentially just to say that the life cycle initiative is, or the work of the life cycle initiative and certainly life cycle approaches are at the center of what UNEP is doing. And our efforts now are into increasing this integration. So moving to the next slide, again, because we have to take quite a bit of a jump in terms of time, what we want to achieve in the strategy is that public and private stakeholders, and that includes also the UNEP and work that UNEP is doing, are understanding better what life cycle thinking means and how they can apply it into their actions, into prioritizing actions and addressing potential trade-offs. So essentially what we're trying to achieve is that governments and industry and other actors like consumers have increased access to the life cycle knowledge, life cycle assessment data, harmonized methodologies, so their decisions can be better informed. Moving to the next, please. These are kind of the key elements of the strategy. I mean, I will not read it all in detail, but it's essentially building on the strategy that the Life Cycle Initiative has been implementing in the past years. But essentially what we want to see is that life cycle approaches are increasingly applied in sustainable decision making. So for that, we are working in several partnerships, particularly working with governments and businesses. We want them to see, them using more life cycle approaches and therefore having their decisions more honed towards sustainable consumption and production. And in order to do that more in the shorter term, that's kind of what we're doing now. We're working on building consensus, as we have been doing in the past 20 years, improving access to life cycle knowledge, and to work more with these private and public stakeholders. As mentioned in the last point, we're working more on working specifically with high impact sectors. Plastics, textiles are mentioned here. Mobility and buildings and construction are the other key ones. This is what the main activities that you will see, and actually there is a good strong continuity of these activities. On the one hand, the importance of the Life Cycle Initiative to continue to strengthen the network, the life cycle network, in bringing governments, businesses, science, and civil society together. But at the same time also to contribute to the knowledge, and not just knowledge generation, but knowledge management, ensuring that life cycle methods are increasingly understood, harmonized, that there is international guidance, and we see that around data, for instance, around methods like as was mentioned in the video, on the GLAM project and the global guidance on environmental impact assessment, but also social LCA, and we heard a lot about that. And certainly then helping to bring all of these into being applied in high impact sectors. And that's what then happens a lot through UNEP projects. And we have particular focus on plastics, textiles, buildings and construction, and mobility sectors to begin with. Food is obviously another key sector where we're trying to also build stronger bridges. But moving to the next slide, and sorry if this sounds a bit rushed, but these are key messages that we hope many of you will also feel aligned with, of what is it that the initiative is bringing to governments. So governments, the Life Cycle Initiative is enabling you to apply life cycle approaches to create science-based policies. This is kind of the key message. Of course, why do governments want to work with science-based policies? Well, because they will help speeding up the transition towards sustainable consumption and production. And this is a key message of what the initiative provides to governments. But as mentioned, the initiative is also working a lot with businesses. And by providing and developing globally recognized life cycle knowledge and tools, these enable businesses to minimize their environmental impact during the whole life cycle of their products. So it's not just their operations, of course, but through the whole life cycle of their products, which is obviously necessary for a future-proof business for the benefit of people and the planet. And we also heard that very nicely from Sanjeevan in the video. And then as in the science and civil society constituency, this is more like a pledge. It's a plea for you to help us improve life cycle approaches by continue sharing your experience and knowledge, as you have been doing very generously through the years. So helping us contribute to the new tools, new methods, generating the consensus, which then help us work with governments and businesses. So from these messages, we jump on now to the next slide. This is going to be the other interactive part, and hopefully we will take it a bit. We'll take a bit more of your contribution. Now we're moving to one specific activity that we've been talking in the last few months through the newsletter, but we wanted to give you a bit more of update of this guidance on biogenic carbon. And for that, I'll ask Mona, please, to take the floor. Mona, can you step on?
Hello, can you all hear me now?
That's perfect. Good.
All right, great. Yeah, this has been great, and I'm happy to be able to chip in a bit about the Biogenic Carbon project that we're working on. We're working on looking at how to account for biogenic carbon in life cycle assessment. And when we're talking about biogenic carbon, we're talking about the carbon that's sequestered from the atmosphere during biomass growth. And currently it's available in many systems and products, everything from construction sector to plastics. And there's a question about how to account for it at the product level. And that is the question that we are trying to tackle. And so as the Life Cycle Initiative, we're trying to build consensus around guidance for how to account for the biogenic carbon in at product level. And for that, we're looking at a process that's going to take us through 4 phases. Currently, we're at the project initiation phase, where we're doing some fundraising for the project. So please do get in touch if this is a project of interest to you. And once we have secured a sufficient amount of funding, about 60% of the entire amount, that's 320 to 400,000, depending on the final activity, then we will be announcing the initiation of the project, and we'll be accepting applications for the Technical Advisory Committee, which will help steering this project, and will work in collaboration with the steering committee to do that. And then we are looking also for applications for working groups, and those will be members that are a lot more involved in this project, and will work together with the implementing partner to debate and draft an initial white paper. Once we have a draft of this white paper, we're going to move on to phase 2, which is the consensus building process. And there we are going to have a workshop, either electronically or virtually, which will help us get to feedback from those who have been involved in the process, but also those who haven't been very involved with the process, but this is still relevant too. And then once we are at a good place with the consensus building, we'll move on to the finalization of the recommendation guide and its dissemination. We will publish the report, we'll hold some regional webinars, and we hope that we will be able to do all of this in about 32 months. Yeah, and if we move on to the next slide, then I can also explain to you the governance structure for the project. This is a project that's going to be happening within the Life Cycle Initiative partnership. So as usual, it's going to build on the members and the membership in the General Assembly from governments, businesses, and science and civil society, as well as individuals. You see here in the light green box that we're looking at to form a technical advisory committee, and I've mentioned that earlier. But this is essentially a group that's going to be advising the project and the implementing partner as they implement this project. We're also looking at, and they're going to be working closely with the steering committee to do that. We're also looking at an implementing partner for biogenic carbon for the project, and that will come a bit later on in the process. And then there will be the working groups. And here it's just important to note that even though we're receiving some funding for this project, there are firewalls in place to make sure that if you are a funder, you're not able to influence the direction of this conversation in one way or the other, but indeed you'll have the opportunity to participate through the working groups or the technical advisory committee if you meet the requirements for each of these. And so we'll be telling you more about this. You'll be hearing more from us about this project as it moves forward. And if you're interested, we're also in being members of the working group or the technical advisory committee, or also interested in learning more and about the funding opportunity for this project, we'll be happy to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to any of us here on the call or send us an email after this call. So I'll hand back to Lawrence right now.
I mean, and just very, very quickly, the resolution, what we call the End Plastic Pollution Resolution that was approved last March, essentially, in a nutshell, what it requires is that it calls upon member states to develop an international legally binding instrument. You can call it treaty, you can call it convention. We don't know what it will be called, but essentially it will be a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, importantly, that says addressing the full life cycle of plastic. Then for this, UNEP is to convene, UNEP was to convene a preparatory group that took place last May, at the end of May, beginning of June in Senegal. And then this preparatory group was to start planning the process for an intergovernmental negotiating committee, or an INC. For those of you who don't know, an INC is essentially the process to generate an international legal instrument. There was an INC for the Minamata Convention that was approved a few years ago. There was an INC for the Montreal Protocol. For all of these processes, they require an INC. And that's where governments meet. It's an intergovernmental, and they meet to negotiate and to negotiate an agreement. So that's essentially what this is. The resolution also asked for a very ambitious timeline with the idea of starting in mid-2022. Remember, this resolution was approved in March, and it was already said that before the end of June, we had to have started the process with the preparatory group, and the process should finish by the end of 2024, with the ambition of then having an agreed legally binding instrument for endorsement by the international community. It also requested, this resolution, to convene a multi-stakeholder forum alongside the first meeting of the INC to provide this exchange of information. And then the resolution also requests already the executive director of UNEP to convene this conference of plenipotentiaries. This is the instrument that can endorse internationally a legally binding instrument. So essentially, that would be the conference that would happen after the negotiation has occurred. If we move to the next slide, the resolution also provides, I mean, there's a lot of substance in this resolution, and I really recommend you to have a look at it if you're interested in plastics and you haven't done it yet. It's all online. But essentially, we can focus on the paragraph 3, what we call the operative paragraph 3, which essentially tells us what the instrument will consider. And we see here important words like the instrument is to consider to promote sustainable consumption and production of plastics, including elements such as product design and environmentally sound waste management. So essentially going from cradle to grave, I mean, from the moment we're conceiving the products until the moment the products are waste, and enhancing resource efficiency and circular economy approaches. The instrument will also have to look at capacity building, technologies, financial assistance. I mean, all the elements that are important in order to implement it. The instrument also will have to consider how do we assess, how do we generate data, monitoring, reporting, etc. How to address compliance, the implementation and effectiveness. Promoting also national action plans, so having the idea that the instrument can provide guidance at the international level, but then a lot of implementation may have to happen at the national level with national action plans, research and innovation, and also particularly this element of multi-stakeholder engagement. So again, I will not go into a lot of details on all of this, but if we move to the next slide, we see that if paragraph 3 talks about what is included in the instrument, paragraph 4 discusses a bit more on how this instrument will deliver. So The instrument needs to bring in obligations, measures, and voluntary approaches to support the achievements of the objectives. Again, we will have to consider how the finance mechanism could work. It will need to consider national circumstances and the fact that different countries are in different states. And then also consider mechanism for the science to ensure that the science and the socioeconomic information are fed continuously into this instrument. And also to build from lessons learned and best practices. So we're really not working on this in a vacuum. Moving on to the next slide, please, just to give you some ideas of the timeline and what the next steps would be. So the resolution was also requesting that the work needs to happen by the end of 2024. Progress so far is that, or the work in the preparatory group decided to work with 5 meetings of this intergovernmental negotiating committee. The first one is already set. Actually, it's not planned, but it's set for the week of the 28th of November in Uruguay. And it will be hybrid. So there will be people participating in person, but also there will be online participation. And thereafter, we will have the 4 other meetings more or less every 6 months. So at the end of April of 2023, November 2023, May 2024, and at the end of 2024, to hopefully come to a conclusion with this instrument. And there you see as well that there will be kind of in the midterm, there will be the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, where there will be obviously opportunities for to provide an update of where we are. Let's move to the next slide, please, because this also provides a bit more detail of the meeting that will happen in the first INC meeting. So INC 1. And also it's important to highlight this first element that the multi-stakeholder forum will actually happen 2 days in advance on the Saturday, 26th of November. As mentioned, this is going to be a hybrid event as well. So if you're interested in participating online, certainly that would be relatively easy. And more information can be shared as well later. I think the links will be shared as well in the chat. On the Sunday, there will be regional meetings and the meetings of the Bureau, and then the 5 days of the week from Monday, 28th of November to Friday, 2nd of December, we will have the negotiating process itself. So I think, unfortunately, Jyoti has not been able to join us. I'm just checking that she's not there yet. Right. So then I'll just continue with a bit more of an explanation. And many of you, hopefully, will have been following the work that the Life Cycle Initiative and the Life Cycle community more generally have been already providing along this process. And this actually started a long time ago. Well, the first element that I would like to highlight is that in preparation for the United Nations Environment Assembly that took place in February, March this year, there was already quite a strong call and quite a lot of work by member states, by the governments and interested parties through several of the United Nations Environment Assemblies. The previous ones, they had convened also an ad hoc expert group on marine litter and microplastics that eventually suggested to work on or to work towards this legally binding instrument. In preparation for the UNEA 5, the Environment Assembly that took place this year, there was a ministerial conference co-convened by Germany, Vietnam, Peru, and Ghana, if I'm saying it correctly. Maybe I'm mixing now a country, and I really apologize for that. And as part of that ministerial conference, there was some preparatory work where the Life Cycle Initiative was requested to explain what a life cycle approach to plastic pollution means. Let's be clear. Everybody seems to be very, very clear that we need to consider plastic pollution across the life cycle, considering the full life cycle. But it's not very clear, particularly sometimes in the heads of negotiators, what does this mean in practice, or what could it mean in practice? So there was this request to generate some capacity to share knowledge, and this, well, the life cycle approach on plastic pollution webinar was convened. There is a link that will also be shared in the chat. Hopefully colleagues can be sharing this link soon. And this is also part of the Life Cycle Initiative knowledge products, and has been a very valuable asset. After this, and after the decision to host an open-ended working group, actually the preparatory meeting for the INC that took place in Dakar, in Senegal last May, it was also requested to host some multi-stakeholder dialogues, which were actually heavily informed as well by the life cycle team in UNEP, and bringing a strong component of the life cycle approach, trying to land what the life cycle approach means. This will actually be, it has also already been further implemented in the preparatory documents for the first meeting of the INC, the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. So again, the team has been, the life cycle team has been heavily involved in providing information for, particularly, for instance, on the science update on plastic and plastic pollution. So all of this document is all about what the life cycle approach is, what do we know about what's happening across the life cycle of plastic and plastic products. This document is currently being edited and translated, and it will also be shared with all of you soon. And then finally, so here's, I mean, the links that are in the slides will hopefully also be shared. And now I see, thank you, Claudia, for sharing the initial link. I think also the link of the first meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee has also been shared. And then, as I mentioned, a couple of days before the INC meeting, we will also be hosting the multi-stakeholder forum, which happens alongside the INC one. And for that, I'm not sure if the link for this website is already available. Otherwise, it will be made available very soon. It is actually available, and Miriam has just shared it. So thank you very much for that as well, Miriam. So apologies for the download of information. I hope that was at least informative. And obviously, I mean, if there are specific questions, we will try and get them answered.
With only one item on the agenda left, we are now going to talk about the steering committee elections. In this section, we're going to talk about the election and the voting rules and how it's going to work. And we're also going to present some of the candidates. So for starters, we're going to start by showing you what the steering committee looks like. The steering committee has 10 seats, 1 seat for the UN, and then 9 seats for stakeholders. We have 3 seats per constituency for government, business, science, and civil society. With one difference in the science and civil society, where we have 2 seats for institutions and 1 seat for individuals. And in all of these 9 seats, we are always looking for a different geographical representation. And so we make sure that we are maintaining that variety between the different constituencies. And so based on that, currently we have 1 seat from the governments, 1 seat from businesses, and 1 seat from the science and civil society for institutions that are up for nomination this year because the current members have just ended their terms. So I'd like to take this moment to thank the members of the steering committee for all the work they do. And we'll now talk about what regions we are looking at for every constituency. So for the government members, we are looking at 1 seat from any of the following regions: Africa, North America, West Asia, and then Latin America and the Caribbean. For the business members, we're looking at a seat from Africa, Asia Pacific, North America, and West Asia. And for the science and civil society, we're looking at a seat for institutions from Asia Pacific, North America, West Asia, or Latin America and the Caribbean. And this year, for individual members, we actually don't have any seats on rotation. The current seat is already filled from previous elections. So if we move on to the next slide, we advertised these availabilities, and we only received 1 input for governments from the US Department of Energy, the United States of America Department of Energy. And so we're happy to announce that they are now going to become the newest member in the steering committee representing governments, and the focal point will be Gregory Cooney, a senior engineer in the Office of Carbon Management. Next, we're going to present for the Science and Civil Society constituency. We actually received multiple nominations. And for that, just a reminder that only institutions will be able to vote, and each institution will only be able to vote once. And so individual members will not be able to vote, and thus will not be receiving the email with the link to vote. So after this session today, we will be sending out the email with a voting link. The voting will start at 3:30 p.m. today, the 15th of September, and will end on the 20th of September. And the results for both the Science and Civil Society constituency as well as for the business constituency will be announced on 30th of September. So we have a couple members with us today from the Science and Civil Society constituency that have nominated themselves for this position, and they would like to run for it. And so I invite Can Haylela from the University of Turku to present himself. So I'll pause here and I'll invite Can to present himself, and then I'll give a chance to Natalia today to present the Ibero-Americana Life Cycle Network. Can, if you are still here, please unmute yourself and open your video and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, hi. So I am Janne Heilala. I'm a Finnish dissertation researcher in manufacturing in the technology field and sustainable education domain. So I have a double degree master's in life cycle management and another in lifelong learning. I've been specializing in innovative, sustainable and educative research by working concurrently at 3 universities in Finland, and I work currently in crucial maritime steering groups as well as research committees. Moreover, I'm studying in the United States, Florida. So I did my 2 master's theses based on focusing on economic and social life cycle assessment, and now I'm aiming to technology transfers, and also my research focuses on environmental viewpoints on life cycle and sustainable research under the lead of UNESCO Seire Arto Kallioniemi in Finland. So we have a really broad research area in Finland. It's a globalized area, and the additive manufacturing is one of the efficiency technologies that I'm currently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. We're just trying to keep those to a minimum. Thank you for your introduction. And now I'll hand over to Natalia Canu, who's the legal representative of the Ibero-American Life Cycle Network. Natalia, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Natalia Cano, the legal representative of the Ibero-American Life Cycle Network, or in Spanish, Red Iberoamericana en Ciclo de Vida. It's the network that centralized the life cycle assessment networks in Latin America. It's a legal entity constituted in 2017 in the city of Medellin, Colombia, as a non-for-profit organization. It's constituted by life cycle assessment networks coordinated by individuals and representatives of organizations like universities, companies, professional associations, government entities, among others. Currently, Isabel Quispe from the Peruvian Life Cycle Assessment Network is the president. And the vision that motivates the members of the network is that decisions by governments, business, and consumers are increasing based on life cycle approach that provide a guide towards the reduction or elimination of environmental and socio-economic negative impacts that occur throughout the life cycle of products, processes, services, and activities. The main objective of the network is to ensure that the joint efforts of its members add to those complementary efforts of a strategic alliance related to sustainable consumption and production, contribute towards a more sustainable development of our societies in the Ibero-American region and in the world. So I would like take this opportunity to invite you to our next CILCA conference the next year in Chile. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you. So you will, every institution as part of the Science and Civil Society constituency will receive the link to vote today. So next we move on to the business constituency. And for the business constituency, again, it's only the institutional members that will be eligible to vote, and we will be sharing a voting link with you. We had a problem with a few of the applications that came through from the business constituency. So the voting will start on the 19th of September, on Monday, and will end on the 22nd of September. We will provide the same amount of time for this voting for the business constituency as we would do for the civil society constituency. And for both constituencies, we will be communicating the results on the 30th of September. And so please look forward to receiving the email from us on the voting. Make sure that you vote, and we will look forward to communicating these results with you on the 30th of September. Next.
Just one note from my side, Mona. In the past, we've had queries from members wondering where their voting email has gone. In the case that there are 2 or 3 representatives for a specific member organization, we only send 1 email to the first representative or the main representative of that organization. So even if there are 3 representatives for one specific member, only 1 email will be sent. So among the representatives of a specific organization, they should coordinate among themselves to make sure that somebody has received it and voted.
Thank you for that note, Thad. All right, so on to the last section. Now, any other business before we call the General Assembly to end? I don't see anything in the chat. But if anybody has any last minute conversations or comments or anything they'd like to bring up, please feel free to unmute yourself and open your video and jump on the call.
Hello, here my name is Sonia Valdivia. Thank you very much for this very interesting and inspirational assembly. I just wanted to recall that, or to invite you all to the next SILCA conference next year. You will start hearing the news. The website will be launched, will be presented, and yeah, you are most welcome. And traditionally, of course, the Lifecycle Initiative, yeah, we'll have a special yeah, workshop. We always coordinate something with you, and yeah, thanks for this opportunity to invite you.
Absolutely.
It will be in Chile in 2023, in July, end of July 23.
Great. And Sonia, we'll look forward to receiving the link for the conference once you open registration or once you have a call for abstracts, so we can share that in our newsletter.
Yeah, will be done these days for the next news LCNet.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sonia. Any other announcements, any other business that you'd like us to cover before the end of this session?
Mona, I would like to invite people to the LCA Foods Conference, which is going to be held in Lima from October 12th to October 14th this year. I can actually show you the, I'm going to share through the chat the detailed program that we already have available. On the 11th, we also have some interesting workshops going on linked to nutritional LCA, macro and microplastics, etc. And just to let everybody know that the conference is completely hybrid, so we're accepting people to come in person. We're expecting about 100 and 120 people in person. And so far, we've got another 100 more or less to register on online. And all sessions are completely hybrid, so anybody can follow that's not in Lima these days. Something important also is that we are going to have all the recordings of the sessions ready for 15 days after the conference, no? So people can come back and check out what has been discussed and all that. So yeah, if anybody wants to book a last-minute flights to Lima, they're more than welcome, and we'll make sure they have a great culinary experience also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks, Sonia, also for putting the link for the conference. Last call. Anything else you'd like to share with the network before we close this meeting?
Just a quick comment. I mean, if there is any other conferences like for this specific phenomena, I am really interested, and like journals, I am also interested. If you can recommend something that like belongs to our category, I would be very grateful.
Yeah, we have actually announced most of these conferences on the Lifecycle Initiative newsletter. So you should, as a member, you should already be receiving the newsletter. Otherwise, it will be online on the Lifecycle website, Lifecycle Initiative website. Please feel free to check it out there. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. Thank you for the tireless contributions that you put in throughout the year. You can see on the slides right now the website for the Lifecycle Initiative and all of our social media handles. Please feel free to join if you're missing any of these outlets, and we will continue to advertise your work over there. Also, feel free to share with us any information that you'd like to see on these websites and on these social media outlets. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.